Olmsted's goal was to improve American society. He had visions of broad recreational and cultural achievements in the heart of cities. He did not see parks as just vast meadows, but as places of harmony, places where people would go to escape life and regain their sanity. He wanted these parks to be available to all people, no matter what walk of life the person followed. Olmsted wanted to achieve the feeling of a sense of shared community and dedicated service to the community among people. Olmsted saw his profession as the way to shape the American city by designing public parks and park systems to meet a wide range of recreational needs. Olmsted believed that the perfect antidote to the stress and imitation of urban life was a nice stroll through a pastoral park. He envisioned places with graceful flowing grass and scattered growths of trees. He believed and encouraged the idea that this environment would promote a sense of tranquility. Olmsted's vision was a sense of calmness that would come from the park by the separation of the different landscape themes and conflicting uses. He was influenced by American natural scenery and the social structure and value system of his native region. Another huge influence was Andrew Jackson Downing, who was the greatest promoter of the modern method of building, which meant rural improvement. Olmsted believed that the rural scenic landscape contrasted with and counteracted the confining and harmful conditions of the crowded urban environment. This belief served to strengthen society by providing a place where all classes could mingle in a contemplation and enjoyment of the pastoral experience. Frederick Law Olmsted has touched the lives and future of many with his well-thought-out, effortless splash of color and natural beauty when it comes to landscape architecture.
Throughout the years, his philosophy was fulfilled by many of his designs. For example, let's start with Central Park. Central Park is arguably the most well-known of all the parks that Olmsted had a hand in. Central Park is located between 59th Street and 110th Street in the heart of New York City. Although Olmsted was the park superintendent, Andrew Jackson Downing was the original force behind the park. He and his partner, Calvert Vaux, were to submit a design for the park. In 1852, Downing died in a riverboat accident, and Vaux asked Olmsted to take his place. In 1858, they entered the competition to design the park, with an entry they called Greensward, which was chosen as the park's design. The design of the park had many aspects that would become trademarks of Olmsted's design. Olmsted's design for the park was said to be very naturalistic, with many bogs, ridges, plateaus, and rocky outcrops. There were winding paths, scenic views, and large open areas for people to relax in. Olmsted served as the chief architect from 1858 to 1861, which allowed him to supervise the construction and to make any changes he felt necessary. Next, we have the U.S. Capitol. In May of 1873, Olmsted was asked by the Senate Committee on Buildings and Grounds to take charge in planning the grounds of the U.S. Capitol. Not soon after that, he realized that the size of the U.S. Capitol grounds were too small for a full-size park, so in turn, he would have to think smaller and lower the beauty of his design to the attractiveness of the Capitol. As quoted by William C. Allen in The History of the United States Capitol, a chronicle of design, construction, and politics, throughout the plan, Olmsted imposed symmetrical order without geometric formality. Curving walks were used in preference to straight ones, contributing to the sense of informality. Much of what later landscape architects would call hardscape, fences, walks, lamps, and such, shows Oriental, classical, and Romanesque influences. The planting conformed to Olmsted's ideas of managed scenery. On the north, west, and south sides of the Capitol, Olmsted designed marble terraces, which caused it to gain greatly in the supreme qualities of stability, endurance, and repose. Olmsted carefully placed groups of trees in a way where they would not obstruct the view of the building. In 1874, he began work on the Capitol grounds, and in 1875 directed his main concentration on the east side, followed by the west, north, and south sides. Because the terrain was so on the difficult side, he began by evening out the elevation of the parcel. For him to successfully even out the grounds, it is said that he removed almost 300,000 cubic yards of earth and transplanted more than 200 trees. Footwalks were then laid around the grounds to make it easily accessible for pedestrian traffic. These footwalks were made of artificial stone, and the approaches were paved with concrete. Soon after, an ornamental iron trellis was installed on the southern and northern east walks to add to the atmosphere of formality. It was not until 1885 that Olmsted decided to retire from superintendency of the terrace project, but was able to continue to direct work on the infamous grounds until the year of 1889.
Next, let's focus on Stanford. In 1862, Stanford University was devised as the land-grant university under the Morrill Act. In 1888, Leland Stanford decided to ask Olmsted, who by this time was known for his many designs of campuses around the country, to design the campus for his new university. Olmsted had plans of making Stanford a compact campus with envisions of few planted areas. One of the first biggest inspirations for Olmsted during his Stanford project was the St. Peter Basilica at the Vatican. He felt this would draw more attention to the inner quadrangle. As stated by art history professor Paul Turner, the original design of Stanford includes the first large-scale use of an enclosed quadrangle in America. But what makes the quadrangle different from its English antecedents is its huge scale and openness. According to historicalsociety.stanford.edu, what Leland Stanford and landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted created here draws on many sources and is important in many ways, including the monumentality of the overall plan, with Palm Drive as the great axial approach that leads you to focus on the buildings right from the beginning. It was also said that Olmsted was aware of the academic difficulty at hand with the university, so he in turn created multiple relaxation gardens. Overall, Olmsted's work on Stanford's campus was known as one of America's biggest moments in campus planning. Now that's something to be proud of. Now, let's move on to the World's Fair. In 1890, the citizens of Chicago decided to make a name for their city. In order to do this, they needed to make a statement. Soon after, Chicago was chosen to hold the World's Fair, not knowing this would be one to go down in history. Olmsted was hired on as a site designer by Daniel Burnham, who was overseeing the project. The site they selected was not his original choice, but because of transportation needs, the eventual site had won out. Ironically, the site had been one that Olmsted and Vaux had designed a park for earlier, which had been rejected. It was said that the site was a treeless marsh for one redeeming aspect: lagoons. As mentioned in Devil in the White City, Olmsted wrote to Burnham suggesting different ways to enliven the grounds. It was said he wanted the lagoons and canals filled with waterfowl of all kinds and colors. His broad view of what constituted landscape architecture included anything that grew, flew, floated, or otherwise entered the scenery he created. Roses produced dabs of red. Boats added intricacy and life. Some would even say the subject became an obsession for him. After dredging the marsh and deepening the lagoon, Olmsted created beautiful terraces and grand pedestrian walkways throughout the complex that all led to the central area around the lagoon, which is surrounded by neoclassical-styled buildings. This was one of the finest examples of Olmsted's blend of the naturalistic landscaping with larger public buildings.
Lastly, we have the Biltmore Estate. In 1888, George Vanderbilt visits Asheville for the first time and immediately falls in love with the area and promptly decides that this shall be the area for his family getaway. Vanderbilt sought out architect landscapes to take on this massive project and eventually landed on Olmsted. This would be Olmsted's last large project that he would complete. Construction begins for the Vanderbilt family in 1889 in Asheville, North Carolina. This 120,000-acre, 225-room mansion was the largest residential project ever attempted by Olmsted in the history of his residential architecture. Olmsted had created an estate that embodied the eloquent simplicity of nature with this project. Olmsted had also added a man-made lake that brought the natural feel of this project together. As you can see, through the years, Olmsted has played a huge role in shaping modern views on landscape architecture. He was involved in many different types of projects that allowed him to combine the natural world within the urban setting. His legacy is still seen today as we continue to find the natural beauty within the simple things of life.